Hello there folks, it's me, Waifu Belector, the only fair human on earth, and today I want to talk about Riot Games. More specifically, their former IP outsourcing project, Riot Forge. It's been a little over a year since Riot Forge was shut down, and I kinda wanted to turn the clock back and take a look at exactly why I think it failed. Because I liked Riot Forge. I liked the idea, I liked the games they were producing, but still it never felt too unbelievable that it shut down. And I've been meaning to make this video for a while now, but it always got buried under things that were more pressing or more topical. But not anymore. So remember to give this video a like if you end up enjoying and consider subscribing. Thanks in advance. Now let's talk Riot. So allow me to very briefly explain what Riot Forge was for those who may not know. Put simply, Riot Forge was a publishing wing of Riot that would shop around the League of Legends IP to indie developers. So these indie devs could make a game based on whatever champion or champions they wanted. And it was a great way to tell League of Legends stories and move the lore, because the League of Legends game, being a competitive multiplayer game, is not a great vehicle for storytelling. And the devs being indie meant you still can get experienced devs, but the production cost was definitely lower than it would be even than doing something like AA titles, so that you can keep this whole thing going for longer because it costs less. And I'll say, the moment Riot Forge came into existence, I liked it, because my relationship with League of Legends is that I engage with pretty much everything League of Legends except for the main game, League of Legends. I'm talking Legends of Runeterra, Wild Rift, TFT, Arcane, and the Riot Forge games. Hell, most recently I played the 2XKO Alpha Lab, but I've never been much of a PC gamer, and if you give me a mouse and keyboard with a game that requires any real level of execution, I'm out. So although I was interested in League's characters and lore for a really long time, I had no way to engage with them myself until the Legends of Runeterra beta and then eventual release. Years later, the expansion of League snowballed into Riot Forge, which was perfect because I love a good single player game and I love a good indie. But how did Riot Forge make its debut? Well, they came out swinging with two games at the same time. One was Hextech Mayhem, a rhythm runner starring Ziggs for some reason that was focused primarily on mobile but was available for PC as well. And like I said, it's a rhythm runner, so your character moves, you tap to the beat. Simple, can be fun, but not really a big deal. The other game was being framed as the big deal, and was certainly the bigger deal. The game was called Ruined King, a turn-based, party-based RPG that focused on Viego and the Ruination, or more accurately, your party trying to stop Viego. And you had an interesting bunch of characters here. Misfortune, Yasuo, Ahri, Braum, Illaoi, Pyke, and of course non-playable allies or enemies like Maokai, Thresh, and Viego. Now, as a vehicle for the lore of League, Ruined King is amazing. It's filled with lore and Easter eggs and all kinds of stuff. The game also looks pretty good. It's an attractive enough looking game. However, as I mentioned, it's turn-based, and a very traditional turn-based combat for the most part. Not grid-based, tactical turn-based, or free tactical turn-based like Baldur's Gate 3. It's the most traditional and therefore polarizing take on turn-based combat. The people who really love that, really love it. And everyone else doesn't. And in the modern era, that everyone else is way bigger. So this style of game was automatically off-putting to a lot of people, and no doubt would lead to a lot of people refusing to try it. But then let's fast forward to 2023, where Riot Forge released The Mage Seeker, a game centered around Silas and the revolution he'd incite in Demacia. It's a cool action kinda RPG, I guess, but it's fun to play and it has a solid story. There's a fight with Jarvan and Shyvana that is actually amazing. But have you noticed anything about the game? Anything maybe you or others might not like so much? Maybe you noticed it's pixel graphics. And while yes, there is a subset of people that absolutely adore pixel graphics and think they're the most charming thing in the world, most people just see it as cheap and or old, and they don't want to engage with it. That's just the truth. And that's even true of games with gorgeous pixel art like Sea of Stars. So games like Mage Seeker are fighting that much harder. It's not like pixel art means you can't succeed, but it definitely makes it harder. Same thing with being turn-based, except for pixel art it's even worse, especially to succeed on a grand scale. Now, only a month from Mage Seeker, another Riot Forge game was released, Convergence. It focused on Echo and was a fun and clever Metroidvania. And I think both Mage Seeker and Convergence are definitively good games. However, even though Convergence isn't pixel art, the art style they've gone with, it's a bit questionable. It's a tad bit off-putting until you get used to it. It's something to get past. But that's the thing, most people won't get past it. They'll look at it, be turned off, and decide not to play it. And sidebar, something I think just needs to be said more internally, both for video games and things like comic books, is people should be saying aloud that I don't like how this looks. You know, presentation matters. It matters so much. But when we try and pretend that mildly ugly art styles look like Arcane and no one tells the truth before we're in too deep, you're just sending games out to die from an unfortunate lack of visual appeal. But anyway, then some months after Convergence, Riot Forge releases Song of Nunu. Obviously a game about Nunu and Willump, and it's a cute little platforming adventure game with some cool little lore bits in there too. And if you ask me, it is the best presenting Riot Forge game visually. There's nothing too weird or off-putting happening. Where I think Song of Nunu runs into trouble is with the type of game it is, a 3D adventure platformer. It's a genre that is in short supply these days and not in high demand either, and is often viewed as just too simple for modern gamers to want to play. Unless of course it's Mario doing the platforming, or very recently Astrobot. However, the Astrobot game didn't exist when Song of Nunu released, so they couldn't even try to ride that wave a little bit. Not to mention the Astrobot and Super Mario budgets are so much bigger. So kinda like Ruined King, I think the chosen genre is inherently less popular, unfortunately. It's not impossible to be a runaway success as a 3D platformer or a turn-based RPG, but it's a bit harder these days for sure. But then we arrive at the final Riot Forge game, which was Bandle Tale, a farming management sim about yordles. And we're back to pixel art. So as I talk about these games, you can see where I'm going, because to me, most of these games were good games, but they were also pretty obviously not going to work. When I played them, when I bought them, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is gonna last forever. I was just thinking, I want to play it and this stuff doesn't bother me too much or anything like that. But internally, I always knew how people were gonna react to it. I never expected any of these games to become some super popular game because they never had a formula to become a super popular game in really any capacity. And there are a lot of formulas to become super popular. They just didn't have any of them. And I can't help but wonder how Riot settled on the development studios that they did to create these games. Because had they picked better indie teams, we may be looking at different results. I mean, if you check out these dev teams, each developer of a Riot Forge game pretty much has an existing title that is the same game without the League of Legends IP. So if we choose other studios, it wouldn't be hard to imagine what they'd create. Why not choose WayForward to develop a game? The art style and appeal of their games are so much better than what we were getting from Riot Forge, even when it's pixel art or sprite based like their River City Girls games. But you also could have let WayForward develop a game in the style of the more recent Shantae games or something. Why not let the developers of Death's Door, Acid Nerve, create a League universe game? That would have likely been absolute fire and far more successful than likely any of the other Riot Forge games. What about isometric Corp Games, who developed Tunic. Admittedly, a pretty similar game to Death's Door, but who cares? Maybe if both developers created two different league-based games that were eye-catching and successful, this style of game could have turned into Riot Forge's thing or something, I don't know. You ever played Dodgeball Academia? That game is cool and it's poppy, and if you gave those devs Pocket Trap, if you gave them the League IP, you probably would have gotten something dope. I don't know, man. I'm just saying. So where did Riot Forge go wrong? I think they chose the wrong studios to develop for them. I think poor genres were chosen. I think poor presentation decisions were made. I 100% believe the outcome of Riot Forge being shut down was avoidable. However, this isn't the end. I mean, it's the end of Riot Forge, but not the end of League having other video game stories. Riot said as much, that they aren't done with creating single player experiences despite shutting down Riot Forge. So presumably that'll mean these experiences start to be created in-house instead. And this isn't certain, but that could also mean they try to allocate a greater budget so that they can really try and wow people. Perhaps even going up to maybe a AA title budget. Of course, that would be a double-edged sword because it would also likely mean a longer development time, but hopefully it would be worth it. But yeah, I was just always kind of disappointed with how Riot Forge shook out. I personally was fine with the kinds of games we were getting, but I knew they weren't generating the necessary attention, which is why I wished we were getting different types of games to prevent the Riot Forge shutdown and continue to get cool League stories. But it is what it is. Things ended up the way they ended up, and I hope Riot's words are true and cool single player League games in Runeterra don't end up a thing of a forgotten era. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did, maybe even subscribe. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to do your favorite thing. Hop in the comments and tell me how stupid and wrong I am. And until next time, I am Waifu Belector. I am just a normal guy. I like hentai and I miss Riot Forge. Goodbye.